Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another installment of this kind of ongoing series we've been doing about show planning and production timelines. Caleb Rothy here, joined with John Mapes. And in this video, we're going to talk about March and April and kind of wrap up the season. I know it feels like there's, like we're on, I don't know, autopilot or something by this point in the season because most of the heavy lifting is done. But there's some crucial stuff we should think about in these 2 months. The first thing I want to mention is going back to kind of that anatomy of an indoor season graphic that we talked about a while back. When March 1st hits, 70% of the season is already in the rearview mirror. And I know many of us still feel like, March 1st, that's kind of still early season, but it's really not. 70% of all the work that the students are going to do has already happened. So hopefully we've done a great job putting them in a great position for success. We've got, we're nearing completion of the show. We're almost to the point where they can start to perform the full presentation for crowds and audiences and feel great about all their hard work. John, what are some of the things that you're focusing on and working on in the month of March?
Well, as you said, March it's exciting. It's like hopefully things have been going pretty well. Hopefully you have your list of things, but you're about to finish the show. So you finally get to see the full idea come to life, which is pretty exciting. Hopefully that's happening early March. It's huge because once again, we now have to basically put this little bit of show together in a very short amount of time because you probably have a show in 2 weeks. It's just kind of how it works. And sometimes it goes fine and sometimes it doesn't go fine. And you just really don't know until you get on the floor. So the sooner we get the show done, the better feedback we will get, the more opportunities for feedback we will get. And the sooner we can get back to the list and all the other stuff from the first 2/3 of the show, right?
Yeah, this for me is the part of the season that feels like payday for me because I've been working at, if I'm using the timeline that John's laid out, I started working on this thing in August. I am ready to get this vision complete. I'm ready to see the full vision take form on the floor. And my students have been working really, really hard for several months now. I want to give them a great product to be able to perform live for people. So my timeline was always kind of whatever my first performance was in March, I wanted that to be the first full rep of the show. Not always practical if you're doing a show on like March 4th, maybe it's got to be your second performance in March if that's the case. But usually by like mid-March, it'd be great to have the whole thing out there. Maybe there's still some detailing to do. Maybe there's like a different ending that we're going to unveil in a couple of weeks, but we want the show to feel mostly complete beginning to end. And the other part, John, is this is now the time of the season where students are really going to be able to refine and perfect the show. We kind of want to get out of learning mode as quickly as possible and get into perfect and detail and craft the show and get that put together so that they're ready to be amazing at the end of the season. Would you agree?
Right. Obviously, the longer they have the full show, the less in learning time, the better we're going to get. And we can start getting better really fast. Especially when I watch groups in the A class. They just finished their show and it's still a little rough. And man, what happens in that last month, if they have a month, is wild. And it makes things tough sometimes on the classification committee, right? But we're like, whoa, did you see those guys? Like we saw the early video and then we see the ending video. But that can happen if your show's done early because now we're really teaching and repping and getting into it, right? And we're getting more feedback. And I just can't overvalue what that really does, and like for me last year, I had a very specific thing. We finished the Pulse show. We're right on all the schedule. This is money. We go to that mid-March show and we're like, haha, show's done. Like, I remember feeling great. We watched it. We're like, I liked it. And then we go to critique and they're like, yeah, but that's not really the ending, right? And we're like, oh yeah, no, of course.
Of course.
And then next weekend we're like, all right, so we got to spice this up a little bit for sure. And we thought we did, and we went to the regional, and they were like, yeah, the ending's just not quite as good as the rest of the show. And we could tell it was better. And we're like, man, really? Like this little outro. And so it took 3 judge reads for us to get to a point where finally we're like, wow, that's it. That's the ending. That's the perfect ending for this show. Thank you. And that's all you're trying to get to, right? You're not trying to get to the end of your show and have the judges be like, well, I don't know if you really got there. Like, oh, yeah, worst feeling.
I always wanted to make sure that the end of the show, which, is arguably the most important part of your show, how you say hello, how you say goodbye, incredibly important. I wanted to make sure that I got several reps of that rather than like just, okay, it's done for championships. Like, I'm not going to get the feedback that I need to know if it's just right. So getting out of that learning phase, I think, is so important early to be able to set that up. And then another thing, John and I have talked about this before. We have both had many years of regret where you get to the end of the season and you go, man, if we had 2 more weeks, do you know what this would look like? Like, do you know how good this would sound? Do you know how many additional things we could fix? And the solution for that is always, well, try to get the whole thing done 2 weeks sooner than you have in the past. And there's your 2 weeks. There's what will be a huge differentiator for you at the end of the season. So I think that kind of summarizes. Yeah, go ahead.
I typically have those 2 weeks, and that's just the truth. And it's been for a long, long time. Like, I get my shows done early so we can sit back and really evaluate things. And the shows go from here to here, every group, every year, because we have that time and we're getting that feedback. The members are getting super confident because they've just had the material for so long. We're making small tweaks. That also helps them stay engaged, super, super important. So this is the best time of the year at the end. But
yeah, I think this is the part that's fun, right? And it's fun if you're, like happy with how your production timeline is laid out. So that is so much easier said than done. It's so easy for you and I to sit here on webcams and talk about that. It's a whole different thing to put it into practice. But hopefully by listening to this, you've pulled out a couple of things that you go, that makes a lot of sense. And that's not what I've done historically. I'm going to try to do that either right now, or I'm going to try to do that with my game plan for next year so that I can apply all these things and hopefully give my students the best experience possible and make the indoor season as fun and pleasurable for us as the instructors and the designers as possible, instead of stressful and traumatic. And anything that we can do that helps decrease that and makes it more enjoyable is just a win-win all the way around. So John, thank you so much for joining me for this and chatting a little bit about timelines and your process and some secrets that hopefully will help give groups a competitive edge out there.
Yeah, it's been great. And I would say that there is a part where we owe it to the students. We owe it to the parents. We owe it to our teaching staff to get this stuff done on time. It really affects everyone's experience. It's not just our own stress, right? It's the entire program. It's the people you want to come back next year because it was awesome. Not because we just did one performance at the end. It was like, well, that was it. See you next time.
Yeah.
But I love talking about this stuff. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, John. Thank you so much. And everybody, we'll see you again down the road.